Have you ever wondered why the moment you care the most, they start pulling away? Why does it feel like the more love you give, the less they show? Why does someone who once felt so close suddenly become distant, cold, and hard to reach? You replay everything in your mind, every message, every moment, every word, trying to find where it all went wrong. But deep down, you already know something doesn't feel right. And here's the truth that most people avoid. It's not that you weren't enough. It's that you gave everything to someone who feels overwhelmed by closeness. You tried to fix it. You tried to understand them. You told yourself, maybe they just need space. So you gave space, but not really. Because even in that space, your mind was still chasing them. Your heart was still waiting. Your energy was still focused on someone who was slowly pulling away. And the more you tried to hold on, the more they let go. That's the painful pattern. You move closer, they move back. You open up, they shut down. You try to connect, they disappear. It feels confusing. It feels unfair. It feels like emotional whiplash. One day they are warm, the next day they act like you don't even exist. And you start questioning yourself. Am I too much? Did I say something wrong? Why do they act like this with me? But the truth is, avoidant people don't operate like you. They don't process connection the same way. Where you see closeness as safety, they see it as pressure. Where you feel love, they feel a loss of control. So when you show up with more care, more attention, more effort, they don't move toward you. They instinctively move away. And this is where most people make the biggest mistake of their life. They chase harder. They think, if I just prove my love, they will understand. If I just stay patient, they will come back. If I just don't give up, things will change. But what actually happens? You lose yourself. You start ignoring your own needs. You accept behavior you would never accept before. You become emotionally dependent on someone who gives you less and less. And without realizing it, you train them to believe that no matter how distant they become, you will always stay. There is no urgency for them to come back, no fear of losing you, no reason to change, because you are always there, always available, always waiting, always hoping. And that is exactly why they don't chase you. Not because you are not valuable, but because your value is too easy to access. It's always there. It's predictable. It's guaranteed. And human psychology works in a very simple way. People don't chase what they already feel they have. They chase what they feel they might lose. Right now, they don't feel like they are losing you. They feel like they can come and go whenever they want. They feel like they can disconnect without consequences. They feel safe being distant because you are doing all the emotional work to keep the connection alive. But here's what hurts the most. You didn't even realize you were losing yourself in the process. You stopped focusing on your growth. You stopped investing in your own life. Your happiness became dependent on their attention. Your mood started changing based on their behavior. One message from them could make your entire day. One moment of silence could break you. That's not love. That's emotional dependency. And avoidant people, they sense that. Even if they don't say it, they feel it. And instead of coming closer, it pushes them further away. Because deep inside, they fear being responsible for someone else's emotions. They fear being needed too much. They fear losing their independence. So they create distance, not always because they don't care, but because they don't know how to handle closeness. And you keep trying to close that distance. But the more you try, the wider the gap becomes. Now listen carefully, because this is where everything starts to shift. The problem was never your love. The problem was where you placed it. You gave your energy to someone who wasn't ready to receive it. You made them the center of your world while they were still trying to protect their own. You tried to build something stable with someone who is comfortable in emotional distance. And that combination always leads to pain. But here's the part most people never realize. This situation is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your transformation. Because the moment you understand this pattern, the moment you stop blaming yourself, the moment you see the truth clearly, you unlock a different kind of power. A power that doesn't come from chasing, a power that comes from changing. And in the next part, you're going to discover exactly what happens when you stop running after them and start becoming someone they can no longer ignore. Because when this new version of you appears, everything changes. So stay with this until the end. Because what you're about to learn could completely shift the way people see you, treat you, and chase you. Something inside you begins to change the moment you stop pouring your energy into someone who keeps stepping back. It does not happen loudly. There is no big announcement, no dramatic exit. It starts quietly. A decision forms within you. A decision that says, I will no longer abandon myself just to keep someone else. And from that moment, your focus begins to shift. You wake up and reach for your own goals instead of your phone. You start thinking about your future instead of their last message. You begin to invest your time in things that build you, not break you. Slowly, your attention returns to where it always belonged, yourself. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Your mind still tries to pull you back. It reminds you of the connection. It tells you to check if they reached out. It whispers that maybe this distance will make them forget you. But you stay steady. Not perfect, but aware. Not emotionless, but in control. And that control becomes your foundation. Days pass, then weeks. You are no longer reacting instantly. You are no longer available at every moment. Your energy is not scattered anymore. It becomes focused, directed, intentional. And this is where the real transformation begins. You start building a life that does not revolve around one person. Your habits improve. Your mindset sharpens. You take care of your body. You organize your time. You learn new things. You grow in silence. And with every step forward, something powerful happens. Your identity starts to evolve. You are no longer the person who waits. You are no longer the person who chases. You are becoming someone who leads their own life, someone who values their time, someone who understands that attention is a currency and you decide where to spend it. This new version of you does not seek validation. This version creates value. There is calmness in your behavior. There is clarity in your decisions. You are not trying to impress anyone. You are not trying to prove anything. You are simply becoming better day by day without announcing it to the world. And this silence, it speaks louder than anything you ever said before, because people notice change, especially the ones who were used to the old you, the one who used to be available instantly, the one who used to give constant attention, the one who used to make them feel in control. That version is no longer visible. And when something familiar disappears, it creates a question in their mind. What happened? They start to feel your absence in a way they never did before. Not because you disappeared completely, but because your presence is no longer easy to access. You are no longer predictable. Your patterns have changed. Your responses have changed. Your energy has changed. And energy is everything. Without saying a single word, you send a message. Your life is moving forward. You are not waiting anymore. You are not stuck anymore. You are not dependent anymore. And that creates a gap between who you were and who you are becoming. This gap is what confuses them. They were comfortable with the version of you they understood, the version they could control, the version that always came back. But now they are facing someone unfamiliar, someone who does not react the same way, someone who does not give the same access. And when people cannot predict you, they start thinking about you. You become a mystery. And human psychology is drawn to mystery. It wants to solve it. It wants to understand it. It wants to regain control over it. That is when curiosity begins to grow inside them. They start observing you more closely. They pay attention to your silence. They notice your absence. They feel the difference in your energy. And slowly, their focus shifts toward you. Not because you asked for it, but because you stopped giving it freely. This is the shift most people never experience because they never stay consistent long enough. They change for a few days, then go back to old patterns. They try to detach, then fall back into chasing. They start building themselves, then lose focus the moment they get a little attention again. But real transformation requires discipline. It requires you to stay committed to your growth even when no one is watching, even when there is no immediate reward, even when your emotions try to pull you back into old habits. Because this is not about making someone chase you. This is about becoming someone worth chasing without trying. You are not pretending. You are not playing games. You are not acting distant just to create a reaction. You are genuinely evolving into a stronger, more grounded individual. And that authenticity cannot be ignored. It reflects in the way you speak, in the way you move, in the way you carry yourself. There is less neediness, less urgency, less emotional pressure, and more stability, more confidence, more self-respect. This is the version of you that changes everything, because now your presence feels different. It feels earned. It feels valuable. It feels rare. And when something becomes rare, it becomes desirable. Not because you asked for attention, but because you stopped chasing it. And as this new version of you continues to grow, something inevitable begins to happen on the other side. A shift in their mind, a shift that you never forced, but created through your transformation. And in the next part, you will understand exactly why this shift pulls them back, and what is really happening inside their mind when they start moving toward you again. As your world expands and your focus stays on your own path, something begins to shift in their mind without you even trying. It is subtle at first. A passing thought, a moment where they pause and remember you. Not the version that kept reaching out, but the one they can no longer figure out. That difference starts to create a quiet tension inside them. Because now they are not in control of the situation the way they used to be. Before, everything was certain. They knew you would respond. They knew you would stay. They knew they could step back without losing you completely. That certainty made things easy for them. It removed pressure. It removed urgency. It allowed them to keep their distance without consequences. But now, that certainty is gone. And when certainty disappears, the mind starts searching for answers. They begin asking questions they never asked before. Why are they not reaching out? Why does it feel different now? Did they finally move on? These questions are not random. They come from a deeper place, a place where the fear of loss begins to grow. This is something they tried to avoid all along. Avoidant individuals are comfortable when they feel safe in distance. But when that distance turns into the possibility of losing someone entirely, their internal balance gets disturbed. It creates a kind of emotional pressure they are not used to handling. That pressure leads to attention. They start thinking about the moments they shared with you, not in the same way as before, but with a new perspective. They begin to notice the value they once overlooked, the consistency, the care, the presence. Things that felt normal before now feel rare because they are no longer receiving it. And the human mind works in a very specific way. It places higher value on what is no longer easily available. What was once taken for granted becomes meaningful. What was once ignored becomes important. What was once predictable becomes intriguing. You did not say anything to create this effect. You did not argue. You did not demand change. You simply changed yourself. And that shift created a contrast so strong that it forced them to look again. Now their attention moves toward you naturally. They check your presence. They notice your absence. They observe from a distance. Not always openly, but quietly. They want to understand what changed. They want to feel connected again, but in a way that feels safe for them. This is where their behavior starts to shift. They may begin with something small, a message, a reaction, a simple attempt to reconnect. It may not look dramatic, but it carries intention, because now they are the one moving toward you. Not because you asked, but because something inside them is pulling them. That pull is not always love in the way you imagined. It is a mix of curiosity, attraction, and the discomfort of not knowing where they stand anymore. It is driven by the fact that you are no longer easy to read, and people are drawn to what they cannot fully understand. This is the part where many misunderstand the situation. They think they came back because they realized my worth. Sometimes that is true, but often it is more complex than that. They came back because your change created emotional movement inside them. You removed the constant reassurance they were used to. You removed the emotional safety net. You removed the version of yourself that made everything predictable. And in doing so, you introduced something new. Uncertainty. Uncertainty creates focus. It makes the mind return again and again, trying to solve what it cannot control. It builds a silent tension that keeps pulling attention back to the same point, you. And this attention slowly turns into action. They reach out. They try to reconnect. They test the waters. They want to see if the door is still open, if they can still access the version of you they once knew. But what they find instead is someone different, someone calmer, someone less reactive, someone who is no longer driven by the same emotional patterns. And this difference is what changes the entire dynamic, because now you are not responding from need. You are responding from choice. There is no pressure in your words, no urgency in your tone, no hidden expectation behind your actions. You are present but not attached. You are open but not dependent. This creates a new experience for them, one where they feel drawn but not in control, one where they feel interest but also uncertainty, one where they realize that access to you is no longer guaranteed. And that realization is powerful because it shifts the balance. For the first time, they feel the possibility of losing you in a real way, not as a thought, but as something that could actually happen. And that feeling, that quiet fear, is what drives them closer. Not in the same way you once chased, but in their own way, slowly, carefully, trying to reconnect without losing their sense of control. But everything is different now, because you are no longer the same person they left behind. And as this dynamic continues to evolve, there is one final truth you must understand, one that will decide whether this cycle repeats or finally ends for good. Now everything reaches a critical point, a moment that decides whether your growth becomes permanent or disappears the second they step back into your life. Because when they return, it does not feel small. It feels powerful. After all the silence, after all the distance, after all the confusion, their presence hits differently. Old emotions try to rise again. Familiar feelings knock on the door. Memories start playing in your mind like nothing ever changed. And this is where most people lose everything they worked for. They see that message. They feel that attention. And instantly, they fall back into old patterns. They respond too quickly. They give too much again. They start hoping again. Without realizing it, they slowly return to the same version of themselves that once felt ignored. And the cycle quietly begins again. But the strongest version of you does something different. You pause, not because you are unsure, but because you are aware. You understand that this moment is not about emotions. It is about standards. It is about everything you built within yourself when no one was watching. You remember the nights when you felt confused. You remember the moments when you questioned your worth. You remember how it felt to give everything and receive almost nothing. And instead of ignoring that past, you use it as clarity. You no longer see their return as validation. You see it as a test of your discipline, a test of your self-respect, a test of whether you truly changed or just temporarily adjusted. Because real transformation is not proven when things are hard. It is proven when things become easy again, when attention comes back, when communication feels smooth again, when everything looks like it might work this time. That is when your mind tries to relax. It tells you, maybe now it will be different. It tries to convince you to lower your guard. But you do not forget what you learned. You do not rush. You do not overextend. You do not give access without observing consistency. You allow things to unfold slowly. You stay grounded in your own life. You continue focusing on your growth, your goals, your direction, because your life is not built around one person anymore. That shift changes everything. Now, your presence is not something that can be taken lightly. Your time is not something that can be assumed. Your energy is not something that is given freely without purpose. And this creates a new dynamic. They begin to feel that they must step forward with more intention. They must show effort. They must meet you at a higher level because they can sense that the old patterns will not work anymore. You are no longer chasing, you are choosing. And there is a huge difference between those two. Chasing comes from the fear of losing someone, from the fear of being alone, from the fear of not being enough. But choosing comes from strength, from knowing your value, from understanding your boundaries, from realizing that your peace is more important than temporary attention. This is the mindset that protects your transformation, because now, even if they step back again, you do not fall apart. Even if they become distant again, you do not lose your direction. Your stability is no longer connected to their behavior. It is built within you, and that is real power. At this stage, you are not trying to make someone stay. You are not trying to control the outcome. You are simply living in a way that reflects your standards. You allow people to enter your life, but you also allow them to leave if they cannot meet you where you stand. No resistance, no chasing, no emotional collapse, just clarity. And this clarity gives you something most people never achieve. Freedom. Freedom from overthinking. Freedom from emotional dependence, freedom from waiting for someone else to decide your worth. You become self-directed, focused, calm, and ironically, this is what makes your presence even more attractive, because now it is real, not forced, not performed, not driven by need. It is the natural result of inner growth, the kind of growth that does not fade when circumstances change, the kind of growth that stays with you no matter who comes or goes. This is where everything finally makes sense. It was never about making them chase. It was about becoming someone who no longer needs to. Because when you reach this level, the question is no longer, will they come back? The question becomes, do they fit into the life I am building? And that question changes your entire perspective. You stop looking for validation. You stop seeking approval. You stop lowering your standards just to keep someone around. Instead, you observe. You decide. You choose based on alignment, not emotion. That is the final shift. You move from being controlled by feelings to being guided by awareness. And once you reach this point, one thing becomes clear. You did not lose anything when they walked away.